Oh yeah, we saw a woodpecker today, guys. Yeah, they're trying to break into my studio.
Extreme.
Just as I was about to game to the extreme.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Yeah, we solved all of our tech issues.
Nice.
By the way, Vaush, this is Rena.
Rena,
this is Vaush.
A pleasure to meet you, Rena.
And you too.
I am live right now, just to let you know, in case there was anything especially spicy you wanted to share right off the bat. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be talking.
Excellent. Thanks for dealing with all my emails, by the way.
Oh, no worries. Not at all.
I started emailing him like a long time ago, sometime in the middle of last year, and then I was so happy that you responded and stuck with it. So thank you very much.
Yes, I remember this started originally with a potential debate with Cenk Uygur.
I was trying to do that.
It's okay. One day, maybe I'll just show up outside of his office one day and throw rocks at the window, and that's the traditional way of getting debates orchestrated.
Yeah. Well, I remember we had a hard time finding out what things that you guys might disagree on, though. That was one of the issues we had.
I've seen him. We would have plenty of disagreements, especially with like liberals, though. I usually have to I have to find that that axis of disagreement, something like meaningful that's happening right now, because the whole like capitalism versus socialism debate for me is super played out, because it always goes the exact same way. Liberals will always agree with the principles you're trying to achieve through socialism, and then they'll say, well, I just don't think it's realistic, and then all you can really do is get them to agree maybe to the selective implementation of a couple of means-tested policies that would bring us closer to that point. It always turns out the same way, so I try not to harp on that too much.
Oh, well, I'm not sure if he was going to do it anyway. I was really trying, because I had an in, and I really wanted to talk to you, and I thought, wow, that would be a really cool debate. And so I was really trying, but I was going to warn him that he would get crushed, and I figured his ego would then be like, oh, yeah? Well, don't tell me who I can't debate. That's what I was going to try to do.
The man does have at least something of an ego. You could definitely play off that. Hey, me too, no hate.
You kind of have to be streaming.
Oh, God, yes. I mean, certainly to do debates, right? Otherwise, you'll believe people when they tell you you've lost, even if you haven't.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've talked a lot about things like that. Like one of the things that I thought was interesting one day, you said something about sometimes just being a good debater is really all you need. You don't really need to be right. You probably, I don't know if you remember saying it, but and not necessarily talking about yourself, but
oh no, it's 100% true. Oh yeah, 100%. Being technically correct, like being accurate, has very little to do with being perceived to have won a debate. Rhetorical skills are by far more important. I mean, you can see that all over the place with the rise of people like Ben Shapiro, who, I mean, the points they make, like if you actually sit them down and break these points apart, like they're very dumb, very wrong, but he's still considered to be one of the preeminent voices of debate and political engagement in the entire Western world, which is insane, but that's the state of things.
Yeah, well, he talks very fast.
That does help.
You sped him up once on 2 times, and it was probably the most hilarious thing I've ever seen.
It's like training yourself in the gravity chamber. If you can defeat Ben Shapiro when he's on 1.5 times speed, you can do anything.
Exactly. Rena, I do not like. I hate uncomfortable silences, so you need to just jump in if you wanted to ask something, because so you know.
Yeah, I'll jump in whenever.
I love uncomfortable silences, so actually don't prolong the silences for as long as you can, just to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm also fine with uncomfortable silences too. So.
Sounds like that's a 2-on-1 right there. Sounds like we could make this hell for him if we wanted to.
Are you playing Elden Ring?
I am. It keeps my brain sharp to get my ass kicked while talking to people.
I understand completely. Well, all right. Well, one of the first questions, if I have this correct, Rena, do you have it up?
Yeah, we've got a whole list for you, Vaush.
Oh, please.
So, all right. So I guess we'll kind of dive in with.
Oh, actually, wait, just one moment. Before we get started with that, you should probably introduce yourselves to my audience in a fuller way.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Rena. You're good at that.
Great idea. Yeah. So we're brand new to this. Jayson and I were previously working on other projects, and became friends, and now we're doing this project together. So we are Human Happy Hour, and the goal is to have lots of interesting conversations with interesting people, and get some different perspectives, share cool things that people are doing. Maybe some activism, maybe some other types of work, and some people will have bigger profiles like what you do, Vaush, and then other people will be just everyday people doing really awesome things, or particularly interesting work.
Nice. Happy to hear it. Happy to be a person with a bigger platform as well. It makes me feel very valid to be referred to that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're the maiden voyage.
I'm happy to be here. Anyway, hit me up.
All right, Rena.
So, all right. So, we'll just dive right in with how you kind of got started, and so how did you get your online name, and do you ever give out your real name?
Yes, my name is Ian. It's well known enough that it's not really considered a secret. But pretty much everyone calls me Vaush. In terms of how I got my start here, I was a prominent chatter in another online edgy debate lords community, a guy called Destiny. And after gaining some notoriety in his community by arguing aggressively for left-leaning political positions, I made my own Twitch channel. And after that, things just kind of blew up and never really stopped blowing up, I guess. So that's nice. As for the name itself, you asked how I got my name, and I choose to interpret that answer in both ways. It is the name of an OC that I made when I was quite a bit younger and drew more often. And I just decided arbitrarily to choose that for my channel name.
OC, what's that?
Original character. Like, when you go on Tumblr and all of the 14-year-old artists are, like, drawing if Sephiroth and Cloud had a kid, and they give it a name. Like, that's an OC.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. I have a gamer channel, and I'm named Kranos, and that is from a D&D campaign from one of my first D&D campaigns when I was 13. There you go.
That's an OC right there. That's D&D characters are absolutely OCs, original characters.
That's hilarious.
I have no OCs, so I'm very far into the whole gaming universe and all that. You started with gaming and everything. So did you set out to talk about politics? Was that part of it, or did that just organically happen?
The politics was always the thrust of my online engagement. I would argue politics. I mean, I've always been into games, of course. Back in those days, Twitch.tv was exclusively a gaming space. Sometimes, like way back when, like in 2015, when I would try to stream, sometimes I would get distracted. I would stop playing whatever game I was playing at the time, like FTL or Binding of Isaac, and I would talk politics for a bit. And like a Twitch, the site was small enough back then. A Twitch admin would actually show up in my chat with a stream with like 8 people in it and say like, "Hey, you have to be playing a game," and I'd go like, "Oh, okay," and I'd have to keep going with it. Yeah, no, it was way smaller back then.
Oh my god, you have to be playing a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did not allow you. Had to be. It was gaming only. And now, of course, you can do whatever on Twitch. So
yeah, except say Cracker.
Except say Cracker. I got unbanned yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, there's our first video.
Yeah, right there. Your good luck, it seems. But yeah, I got unbanned just the other day. I'll just keep streaming on YouTube though. For now at least, it's a little bit too easy to get banned from there at the moment, I think. Doing political content at least. So I'll probably just enjoy the fact that I'm able to talk to people from that space without actually streaming there.
Have you thought about streaming anywhere else? Like, what's that? Not Curiosity Stream. What's the other one there that the Legal Eagle guy is doing.
Oh, that's just a content hosting place. I don't think they do live streams. I think they just host videos.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Cool.
Nebula, I think.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I'm actually curious about when you used to be in Destiny's. Are we not supposed to say his name? I can't remember.
You could say his name, and yes, I was.
You're in Destiny's community. How did you become known in the community enough to start streaming and people knew to go to watch you? Like, how does that work? Just in Discord, or were you at comments, or?
I would try to argue with him on his stream, successfully sometimes. As in successfully as in I was able to get on his stream. Whether or not the debates themselves went in my favor is, of course, a matter of opinion. But I was mostly arguing pro-feminist positions. He was more right-leaning at the time.
Okay, and have you ever actually debated or talked to Hassan?
I've talked to him, yeah. I mean, I've talked to him, like, off-stream a decent number of times since we're adjacent in the industry. But in terms of, like, doing stuff on stream, I think we talked briefly along with H-Bomber Guy back in, I want to say, late 2018, and that conversation was actually what inspired me to get serious about making a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay, well. Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't talked to you on screen yet, but...
I was watching, so in preparation for our conversation, I've been watching a good amount of your stuff, Vaush, and I was watching the current, I guess, falling out, or I don't know what you want to refer between whatever's going on with Hassan, and so it seems like there's not a lot of friendliness, I guess, going on at the moment.
I definitely think he's died on a couple of really stupid hills in the recent past. Unfortunately, it just seems like in some issues he defers to a very aesthetic understanding of socialism, and he gets very angry when he's called out for it. So, God willing, we'll get him over one day, but, you know, can't hold my breath.
Who do you think is your nemesis online? Because you have to have a nemesis.
I don't really think so. I know there are
Really?
people who want to think they're my nemesis, but I don't really think anyone has, like, given me enough trouble to warrant my recognition to that sort, you know? There are people who are more annoying or more aggressively pursuant of my interest than others, but there are probably like a dozen people who think of themselves that way. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I feel like I feel like that means a lot to them and very little to me. So
You probably have a thick skin, so you can't really have a nemesis, I guess.
listen, I'm my own nemesis. Okay, that's the closest we're getting. I am consistently my own worst enemy.
Of course, aren't we all really?
Oh yeah.
So who then, if you don't have a nemesis, who do you really like watching? Like, who do you have anybody that you admire in this streaming space?
There are many people I respect, that's for sure. In terms of admiration, well, personal disagreements aside, I think that ContraPoints has a remarkable script writing ability. I think that there's an aesthetic and rhetorical conciseness that's really worthwhile and valuable there. In terms of formidability, I think Keffels on Twitter has been dealing with an ungodly amount of harassment and has been weathering it with admirable tenacity. In terms of researchability, there's a content creator called Soaked on Left, and another called Rose Wrist as well. They're both quite good at this, though Soaked on Left interacts with me publicly more often. They're both very, let's say, fastidious nerds. They're very big into research. They love it. And that's pretty admirable, I think. There are a lot of people that I respect in this space. I'm not sure about admiration necessarily, but I think you can learn from all of them.
I was looking up your channel on Social Blade. And I noticed in June and July of 2020, you gained 100,000 subs. What on earth happened?
Oh, that would have been because of the primaries for sure. Yeah, back during the the big beefs with Buttigieg, Biden, Bernie. I nearly said Warren Ellis. Oh God, wait, I'm having a brain fart right now.
You just made it's something Warren. She knows. She is
Elizabeth Warren. Thank
Elizabeth.
God. Oh, okay. Whew, it's okay. Yeah. Warren Ellis. So it's like E is the other name. It begins with E. Yeah, okay. That and BLM. I think that my channel did a particularly good job handling those issues in particular. So I'm pretty proud of that in retrospect. I think those were definitely well-earned subs. So I'm happy looking back on that.
Nice. How do you prepare to? I mean, you always say you don't have a good memory. I do not agree with you at all. Or maybe I'm just comparing you to me, because mine's horrifying. But how do you prepare for that stuff? Is it just in your brain, and because you read a lot, or do you do any preparation? Like, where do you go to get your information that you feel comfortable sharing with your audience?
No, I never do any preparation beforehand. I mean, I read studies, of course. I watch videos when I'm off stream, but I don't ever prepare for a stream. One of the reasons being that I've always held the position that I think it should be evident that most of the arguments we deal with are so bad that you don't really need to prepare to defeat them. You can usually just, like, a Wikipedia level knowledge of any subject along with basic rhetorical skills is usually enough to handle, like, almost any confrontation you're going to have with people who disagree with you. Obviously, it helps to go further than that, of course, you know. And if I was debating like a professor who I really disagreed with, I'd try to learn more. But for the most part, I think it's important to reinforce the idea that it's very accessible, the ability to, disagree with people and come out on top.
That is the lack of preparation and just diving in. Jayson and I were talking about that before, is like sort of nerve-wracking. Like I had to I'm like, we have to have a list of questions going in.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's way better to not prepare for anything at all. No expectations. Yeah.
This list is totally distracting me. I keep looking at it.
just go, Jayson. I guess.
Well, I mean, like one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, and you know, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I am interested in, well, do you get any death threats?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And how do you deal with that? Like actually, like, you know, in real life and also in your brain and with emotions and like.
Oh, I just ignore them.
Really?
Yeah, there's not really much else to do with them. I mean, if you want to look at it like logistically or whatever, the type of people who make errant death threats online and the type of people who will risk their life actually enacting them are not the same group of people. They're two completely different groups. You can go online and see this from like lefty circles if you don't want to like get in with the right. Most of the people on left Twitter making death threats at like public figures they don't like are 14-year-olds who like have to stave off suicidal thoughts every evening. They're not in a great place themselves. They lash out at others. I'm not afraid of them. At most, they're annoying. If anything, I feel bad for a lot of them. They're clearly not in a great place themselves. The same is the case for the right. These are not exactly the pinnacle of like mental well-being. You know, these folks. No, I don't pay it any mind. You know, you can stay concerned over that kind of stuff if you want, but at the end of the day, the point of those threats is to silence people they don't like, and all you're really doing is letting them win if you give in to that. I mean, because if you gave in to that, then like every person in the online space would have to give in to that, right? By that standard, and then like the person who throws the most death threats would always win.
That's, I guess, sort of like the don't read the comments thread in your own videos and, you know, things like that, because people just say terrible things, and why give them weight, you know, or pay attention.
Yeah, if reading comments bothers someone, don't read them. You're not going to learn anything. Like, no one, listen, okay? If you actually feel like you could stand a benefit from public criticism, which often is just not the case at all, don't read them yourself. Get a friend who you trust to go through negative comments, cultivate them, and sort the actual points being made, not the comments themselves, but the sentiment of those comments, the content, the stuff you're looking for. Sort them out, and get them to give you a summary. That way you can deal with the worthwhile criticism, or at least the raw information, without subjecting yourself to all the negativity. There's just no reason to ever like torture yourself by looking through a bunch of negativity online.
Yeah, I have really thick skin. Definitely, I don't care what people say about me, to be honest. But And I'll prove it right now. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was autism. My son is autistic, and through learning
Based.
about him, I learned that I must have been or am, and just my childhood's so similar. He's nonverbal still, and he's 5. But I wanted to know, clearly your brand or you on the spectrum of autism is definitely high functioning. So, I mean, because you said you were
Thank
autistic in a screen. Well, obviously. What was your childhood like? Were you nonverbal at any point, or did you just excel and start reading books at like 2? Or
I have never in my life been nonverbal. No, actually, I've never actually been able to focus much on reading either. Hyperfixation has always been my most predominant autistic characteristic, I suppose, like dropping everything to hyperfixate on something. For me, it was public speaking, which I obviously enjoy very much and now get to do for a living, so, you know, that worked out pretty well in my favor. You know, I don't like to talk about the autism stuff too much because, you know, I got it pretty easy, all things told. There are people who have it worse, and I was able to essentially, like, build a life to perfectly accommodate my, you know, idiosyncrasies? Idiosyncrasies? I always forget how many. Is it syncrasies? There's one. Okay, I added one too many syllables. Idiosyncrasies.
I mean, I'm saying it, so it could be wrong, but
I'll go with that. One fewer syllable is that much easier to pronounce. But, you know, I was able to build a life around that, which was startlingly convenient. For me, I think ADHD was always the stronger force in terms of my neurodivergence. When it comes to, like, when I was younger or whatever, I mean, I didn't have the best social life when I was young, but it also didn't bother me that much. I guess, like, if you look back throughout history as well, you know, like, we have a very strict archetype for what a successful social life is, and it's kind of a dumb and arbitrary one, especially in high school. Like, people in high school, they care so much about, you know, like, you have to have this many friends or go to the parties or whatever. Like, you know, I just, like, talked 40K with my nerdy-ass friends and left it at that, and that was fine. And I was happy with that. And now that I'm older and I have a bit more control over myself, I can pretty much do whatever I want socially, so I feel like I waited it out, which is nice.
Yeah, I think a successful social life is if you're happy, right? Who cares what the societal definition?
yeah, we're both introverts, big time.
Yeah, I
Rena
just
and
think the one thing that I never got over is I really dislike verbal ambiguity. When a person is talking, there's so much like etiquette when it comes to like, okay, well, is that like if you're flirting, for example, like there's so much like nuance to the way people phrase stuff about what they actually mean, and it varies person to person. It's not like you can just learn one standard and then be done with it. You know, every person has their own weird, arbitrary set of rules for interpreting how they speak. And so in my experience, I thought, and I still feel, that it was always best to just throw shame to the wind and just be aggressively upfront with every element of the conversation. Hey, do you mean this? Just to be clear, do you mean this? And if they find that annoying, like, okay, then things wouldn't have worked out anyway. The point's to not be ashamed of it.
Wow. How do you do that? How does that work with relationships?
Always worked for me. If it ever didn't work with a person, I probably wouldn't have been good, like, partners with them anyway, so... You know, I just dislike the ambiguity. I feel like I'm generally pretty upfront and direct when I speak. I don't leave people guessing as to what it is I mean, especially interpersonally when I'm trying to, like, you know, get to know a person. But that's a skill, and I'm pretty good at speaking. So maybe some people are just ambiguous because they aren't as practiced with being deliberate with their speech, and that's fine. That's not, like, an insult to me or whatever. But I think it's acceptable for me in response to one, you know, to get clarifications from them. And if they have a problem with that, then, you know, that's on them.
Sorry, Rena, I cut you off.
So it's interesting to hear you say that because I have a brother on the autism spectrum, and I think my father is as well. And I think I have adapted by speaking very bluntly and directly, you know, I think because often that's not understood if you're speaking, you know, with a more, you know, ambiguous tone. And so I will sometimes get dinged by people, you know, for being so like upfront and direct. I don't stop, you know, I still do it anyway, but yeah, it's because I prefer it. So, but it's interesting to hear you, you know, talk about that.
I think it's generally better to go about it that way anyway. You know, there's enough ambiguity in people's day-to-day lives. I've noticed that even a lot of neurotypical people, you know, people who I don't consider to have any issues generally understanding people, they're constantly fraught with anxiety over, well, what did this person mean? You know, it's like a trope, right? Well, what did she mean with this text, you know? Fucking ask. Just ask. Like, if there's an issue with asking, then you probably shouldn't be talking to that person anyway, because they're not adult enough to handle, like, a mature conversation about their intentions. Clearly, we all struggle with this, so maybe if we were all a bit more upfront, not only would it make life a little easier for autistic people, I think it would make life easier for everyone.
Yeah, now you recently started Adderall, correct?
Yeah, like 4 or 5 months ago, which has helped tremendously with ADHD stuff.
Yeah, do you find that your outward, immediate, just saying whatever you want to say has diminished at all, or does it keep you in check at all?
No, I don't think it limits my personality in any way. I feel like that was always the thing I was always worried about with medication of any kind, the idea that it would somehow limit my personality. That hasn't been the case so far. Maybe it is for some medications. I don't want to speak for all of them, but for me, it has not been the case.
That's good. Yeah, it did for me. I take Adderall as well, and I find that in the morning when I first wake up, I have these amazing ideas. I take an Adderall, and they weren't really that interesting, actually. The ideas.
Really?
It's like, yeah.
It
took a while for it to get there, though.
I find for me it's quite the opposite, actually. That I tend to be a little bit more muddled before, you know, if I haven't had, you know, Adderall or whatever for a while. And I'm able to concentrate a little bit more after I have, and that's generally to my benefit. But, you know, it varies.
Yeah, I'm sure it depends on the person and, you know, how your mind is interacting, you know, with the medication. So totally makes sense.
There's a lot of nuance to how those particular medications function with individuals. It's usually best to get follow-up consults, especially because you can have partial successes sometimes. Where it seems as though the negative symptoms that are being treated have been addressed, but there are like, you know, side effects that could be ameliorated if you took a slightly different medication, something like that.
Do you guys hear like a little scratchy sound from someone? I'm not sure who.
I'm afraid
like
I don't. Chat, do you hear any scratchy noises? I'll get my my external verification from them.
Oh, okay.
People in chat are saying no.
Okay, so I don't know what that is then.
I don't have, and
it's once in a while, so it's no big deal. So what did you end up raising for Ukraine? Was it over 300K?
It was just under 1/3
Wow.
yeah, wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm pretty proud of my community. I'm really not the one who should be praised here, of course. I just played video games during that time. They were the ones who actually donated.
Right. In your opinion, I mean, I'm sure you did a little bit of research before you decided who you're going to donate to, but what do you think that the money will be used for?
It's for providing mostly medical and hygienic supplies to Ukrainian refugees that have been brought through the humanitarian corridor off to the west. So helping refugees who make it over to, you know, Romania or Poland. The difficulty in choosing which charity to donate to was primarily that this is one of those situations where it's actually really, really difficult for charities to get involved at all. I mean, it's an active war zone. It's not like any old charity is just going to march on into Kyiv, you know, like dodge rocket shells and try to make the people there safer. It takes a lot of on-the-ground investment to even be able to do anything. So Project Hope is a larger charity, and for that reason, I think they have like the operational support to be able to manage something like that.
Oh my God! Someone called me Rogan on chat. Whatever. It's ridiculous. Just shave your head and you're Rogan or Picard.
They're face blind for white people. Yeah, I wouldn't feel too bad. They do this to me all the time.
Who are you normally?
Seth Rogen, or literally any white guy with a beard.
Seth Rogen. I don't see that.
I weighed 80 pounds more last year, so there was a bit more of a resemblance then. He's lost a bunch of weight though, I think.
Yes, you have. As someone that watches you quite a bit, I've watched the progression, and you have.
Oh, we both have then. Me and Seth Rogen. So I guess we're like keeping
Oh.
pace with each other. But yeah, either way, face blind for white people. Very racist of them.
One of the things that I was going to ask you when we were with Wolfpack, when I wanted you to come on the show there, was about corruption. What if you were a wizard and you could gain power over something and you could make yourself, I thought so. You could make yourself have the ability to control enough people so that you could make anything happen. What would you change in our country that would make corruption, without hurting anybody, of course? What do you think it would do for the people to get the power back? Like if you could influence.
Corruption's a really a very broad term. Do we mean illegal behavior, or are you just talking about like collusion between corporations and? Well, at the end of the day, the issue is that what you're referring to is corruption, and I guess what I also consider corruption is also a necessary product of any modern democracy. You know, politicians have to listen to the people in an explicit sense. Obviously, we vote for them. But if a politician, or if politicians broadly, if they were unwilling to listen to corporate needs, this sounds bad, but it's true. If they were unwilling to listen to corporations, our country would suffer tremendously for it. You know, our economy, especially here in the States, it is, after all, the backbone of this country. And the only reason we're able to maintain that, along with our relatively high standard of living, is because corporations have the ability to petition their needs to politicians. So for me, it's not about the collaboration between the two that really bugs me. It's the nature of that collaboration. And I think the solution to that, functionally, would be to make the interests of those corporations parallel to the interests of the people who vote for the politicians. Essentially, worker democracy. That way you can maintain the processes that allow a modern economy to function, but you can make it so that the needs of the corporation aren't that different from what people would vote for anyway. At least in theory. You can make them better.
So you would what would your plan be to actually implement
worker democracy? You know, full-on seizure of the means of production. If you'd like, you know, worker cooperatives could be mandated. Every business in the United States could be a worker democracy to some effect or another. However that could be implemented, I think that would be a significant step up.
Sorry, I'm hearing a scratchy sound. Are you, Rena? Are you hearing a scratchy sound when he's talking?
I just did.
When I'm talking, and wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Are you hearing? I don't know how this would be the case. Are you hearing my game audio? Wait, I'm just one moment. Here, I'm gonna. Okay. Do you hear anything?
No, it's definitely only when you're talking. It's like you have a scratch sound. I just asked chat if they can hear it.
Yeah, it's like a tiny bit of static.
That is interesting.
Yeah, really
Let me
weird.
make sure that the mic settings are correct. One moment. It can't be the game. There's no possible way.
It's not the game. I would recognize that.
Okay.
I played the game too.
Oh, wonderful.
I would hear it.
Just one moment. Select a speaker. Focusrite USB. Let me reset this.
Yeah, it almost sounds like your microphone cable. It's like either your gain, possibly. This is just one possibility. Your gain could be too high, or you could have a cable possibly. No, it wouldn't be loose because that would make no sense.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Scratchy.
Oh yeah, big time.
That is.
I mean, for me. Anybody?
Interesting.
Rena?
Yeah, I wasn't hearing it before, but now I'm hearing
Oh, great.
it.
Sorry.
let me rejoin the
Okay.
Zoom call. One moment.
Hell yeah.
Don't
All right.
say that yet.
All right.
How do I
that was
sound?
Pretty good.
Oh. Okay.
All right. And I sent, did the first link didn't work, so I had to send another one to you guys, which you probably figured that out.
All right, we did
lived
it. We learned a lot about ourselves, about we grew as people.
I feel it grows, definitely. Oh, wait. That sounded weird.
Ah, that sounded good.
I feel like growth. Oh, here she comes. Yeehaw. All right.
Hello, hello.
Fantastic. All right. I'm going to rearrange everybody back to where they were. There we go.
Is it working?
Yes,
It is.
Everything is fantastic again. Let me just make sure OBS is still going. Everything's good in OBS. Yes, it is. Good.
Remarkably.
All right. Excellent. So one of my questions to you was, do you ever have any tech issues?
It's been known to happen from time to time, you know? It's a pretty volatile medium, unfortunately. There's always potential for some shenanigans to take place.
It's absolutely true. Sometimes the people in my house will be watching something, and that causes absolute havoc. It's horrifying.
Yeah,
But,
computers just ain't that great, you know. There's always going to be some compatibility issue here or there. I'm not a huge tech guy. I mostly rely on my community to fix any problems I encounter.
I couldn't figure out how to share the with Rena. I'm just like, how do I do this? I have no idea, and I'm usually pretty good at all this stuff.
All that matters is we made it happen.
Well, I have a bunch of questions that are that Rena decided were called fun and random, which is her way of saying that I'm random.
I categorized all of the questions.
I'm not. Yeah, we're like Mulder and Scully for organization. I had a question. I don't know if you remember me asking you or telling you about it in email, but you say to someone that's not up on the dialect that you use a lot of acronyms and words that are pop culture, and I'm just like, what all the time. So I started, when I was watching you, I started writing them down, and I could have looked them up, but I decided that I would rather get your interpretation of it.
Uh-huh.
What in the world is a Chad?
So basically, a couple of years ago, a group of people, which came to be known as incels, which stands for involuntary celibate, they became very, I don't know, prominent online, very culturally relevant online. And the basic gist of it is that these are people who are upset with their lot in life and feel as though they're having trouble getting laid or finding relationships, due in large part to inviolate genetic characteristics that they can't change, like their height, their bone structure, stuff like that. A very sad group of people, but they're very prominent, or at the very least discourse about them is very prominent. You know, it comes up a lot. And they separate the people in the world into a kind of set of hierarchies, the top of which are chads, or I guess alpha males, basically just very attractive, very socially successful men who don't have to put that much effort into finding relationships and are usually in relationships with one or multiple women at any given point in time.
Okay. All right. So, like
it's a very matter-of-fact answer right there, but of course it's been colloquialized 1,000 times over, you know, since then, so.
So like attractive alpha frat boys kind of thing?
Basically, yeah. I think that's the archetype that gets brought up. Now, the incels as a group aren't taken that seriously, I don't think. So I think a lot of people use Chad in like an unironically affirmative way. Like if somebody's behavior is really brave or inspiring, they'll say like, you know, oh, that's very Chad behavior or something. And I think that's kind of nice, turning it into a positive mantra.
All right. I also challenge your chat to come up with words that you've always wondered what in the hell he's talking about when he says the word so flippantly and you just don't know what it is. But I've got a few more. I know what LARPing is, but you say that people are LARPing in a sort of, I think you're kind of joking a little bit because they're definitely not like actually LARPing. So, but what do you mean when people are LARPing if they're not actually LARPing?
Well, I think, especially when we're talking about online politics, you know, I think there are people who affect an unnecessary and counterproductive degree of seriousness. And sometimes this manifests as people who are acting like they're like the vanguard of some revolutionary movement. And in reality, they're like a Twitter poster. You know what I mean? So like an example of someone who could be considered to be LARPing is, you know, if you look at the far right online, you'll find Twitter users whose like avatars and profile pictures are Roman statues, and they'll be talking about like the glory of the white race and like the blood of the nation and how the day of the rope is coming and blah blah blah. And it's like they're LARPing, like they're acting like they're the vanguard of some glorious political uprising, but in reality, like they're a cashier at like the dollar store.
So a poser, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, like a poser. Like they're being pretentious. They're pretending they are involved in a much more serious degree of political engagement than they actually are. Something like that.
Okay. What is a Giga Chad?
A Chad but Giga, basically. No other way to put it. It actually refers to a specific guy. A Chad. It's like there's just an image that goes with it, like a Wojak, like a drawing that people think of when they say Chad. But Giga Chad refers to an actual male model. He's this really, really muscular guy. Basically, his girlfriend is a photographer. God damn it. His girlfriend is a photographer who takes photos of her very muscular and very handsome boyfriend and makes him more muscular and more handsome. Not even really handsome, more like inhumanly masculine. I mean, it's deliberately pushed up to like beyond parody, basically. And that specific guy, just, you know, his girlfriend takes photos of him like flexing and, you know, looking ridiculously vascular and so on.
Okay.
You know, it's pretty good. It's fun.
All right. And I know what the game Roblox is, but what does it mean to be Robloxed?
To die.
Why?
People who made... so it used to be the case that when people would make thinly veiled threats online, they would say in Minecraft afterwards. Because it was a way of jokingly circumventing the terms of service agreement for the website they were on.
I understand.
Only jokingly. It doesn't. I don't think it actually does anything, really. You know, but it's just like a meme. However, there was I think it was the FBI had a document leaked where they acknowledged that people would say stuff like in Minecraft after making serious threats as a way of navigating around the terms of service. So after that document was leaked, people were like, oh, they're onto us. Okay, now we'll use Roblox. So now in Roblox, or getting Robloxed is the nomenclature.
I see. So yeah, I would call it DayZ'd.
Oh yeah, yeah, anything like that, right?
Right,
It's the sentiment is maintained. Yeah,
I understand now. Okay, good. You sometimes will say this, and I've heard a lot of people say this. I think I know what it means, but I deliberately did not look it up. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just go, based. What is that?
I think I don't know if there's a consistent definition. I think when people say based, what they mean is good because it serves my political ideology. So usually when I see people say based, it's never just because the thing is good. Like, people don't tend to say, like, this is some based coffee, or like, this is a based restaurant. I mean, they can sometimes, but usually when people say based, they mean like good, comma, because it supports my political ideology. Okay. That's the way I see it used most often.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that there's a lot of words that you hear somebody say it, and then for long, I always like to know where it came from, which is hard sometimes, but you start seeing everybody, like everyone says, let's go now. It's like super common, like, let's go. And
yeah, the baby really kicked that one off.
Oh, okay. That's what that was?
Oh, he did the let's go thing with that song, and I think it just kind of went off from there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that I don't think that was even internet culture at first. I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, like an AAVE queer culture thing, and then it got like roped into mainstream, the way everything queer AAVE culture ends up going, you know, so very consistently.
I understand. A lot of these I've actually learned, but there might be people out there that were like me about a month ago.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll say, I mean, I know what it is now, but what is your definition of a tanky?
Well, historically, it was a term used to refer to people who defended the Soviet Union's rolling tanks into, I think it was Hungary, right? Because Hungary was having protests, and the Soviet Union was like, actually, you don't get to choose whether or not you're our ally. You know, we're going to send our army in to quash these protests. And tanky was the term for people who were like, okay, you're not really a communist. Like, you're an authoritarian. You just like the color red. And I basically feel the same way about that today. I think that, like, definition pretty much still holds true, you know? So, like, you have a lot of people right now who I would call tankies who are defending Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And it's like, well, this has nothing to do with socialism. You just like Russia more than you like other countries. You just have that, like, you know, national bias.
Okay. I won't do too many more.
I love these.
Oh, well, good. I have a few. TERFs.
Trans exclusionary radical feminist, a term for...
Oh, it's an acronym.
Yes, like J.K. Rowling types, basically. The basic gist is like people who will use feminist terminology as a front to attack trans people. So most people who hate trans people, you know, will, like conservative types, they'll just be transphobic openly, you know. But the TERF manifesto is instead to attack trans people by fronting phony defenses for the rights of like biological females. So the idea would be like, oh, we don't hate trans people, you know, we just think that uncritical acceptance of trans people is destructive and damaging to the rights of, you know, biological females, because they never use the term cis women. Stuff like that. It's a pretty phony movement. I think the vast majority of the TERF movement is just like conservatives who don't give a fuck about women's rights or feminism propping up TERFs like J.K. Rowling because they're politically expedient, you know? It's kind of like how there are very few like super conservative black people in the United States, but if you watch Republican media, you would get the impression they're everywhere. And you'll have like black Republicans like make YouTube careers with millions of white people who sub to them, or they're like, you know, I just think black culture is the issue, and I grew up and I got out of the hood, and if all the other kids had gotten over their black culture, they could have gotten out of the hood. And it's like, you look at that and you look at their support, you know, but the way they would, the way they make you want to think is that like all that support is coming from black people who agree with them, but like not really, right? Like the overwhelming support they get there is just white conservatives who agree with them. And that's how I feel about TERFs, basically. It's kind of like a front of a movement.
Okay. Let's see here. Oh, feel free to. I know I can tell Rena's like ask questions. And
Yeah. You're doing a great job going through these terms. This is a fun exercise.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
well.
feel like I'm really flexing my ability to interact with human beings who don't spend 18 hours a day online. It's you know, it's a good
Well, I'm
wake
just
up call
lazy.
for me.
I just want someone else to tell me what things mean. Postmodernism.
Okay, wow. So that one means a lot of things. The basic gist of it, I think the most consistent definition you're going to find is that postmodernism refers to a philosophical and artistic tendency of rejecting singular narratives. I mean, in the most technical sense, it's a critique of modernism. So whatever modernism is in a given field, you're going to find postmodernism as a critique to it. If you look at postmodernist architecture, it's a critique of modernist architectural trends. If you look at postmodernist like literature and philosophy, same to modernist tendencies in those fields, stuff like that. Postmodernism is usually used in reference to philosophy, and postmodernist philosophy is essentially the rejection of one coherent single truth. The idea that a single narrative can describe the entire human experience. That's the main thing that it's arguing against. In that respect, I agree very much with many of the postmodern arguments that I have seen.
Okay. Reptile person.
It really depends on which political group you're talking to.
Yeah.
I think that radicals on the right and the left both use like lizard people, reptile person, stuff like that to refer to the nefarious elites, you know, referring to their perceived inhumanity. Left-leaning people will do this because like they imagine like a bunch of corporate boardroom executives who have no soul, who only care about making money. Right-leaning people often do it imagining like Jews, you know, so very, very much one of those ambiguous terms with regards to how much of a dog whistle it's being used as. It's one of the reasons why I've always I don't like using the elites as a kind of catch-all term that much, not because I think it's wrong. If I were to say something like, I think the elites are destroying our society, I would be correct. I mean, I believe that, you know, but when people are listening to me, what are the elites in their head, right? Like, do they think I mean, like, capitalism, or do they think I mean, like, Jewish people? Like, that ambiguity, well, like I said, I don't like ambiguity.
Okay, so this probably goes right into this. They're probably related. Ivory Tower, that's where the reptile people probably live, I'm assuming.
That usually refers to academic elitism. The ivory tower stuff, I think, is mostly used by conservatives. who dislike the fact that people in academia overwhelmingly disagree with them. It is something that I've heard left-leaning people use sometimes to critique academic elitism in their own spaces. But for the most part, I find it's people who are just kind of angry at the idea of the experts disagreeing with them. You know.
Okay. Why don't you go get in your ivory tower? Like, what is that? Is that the saying, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, no, it's like the idea is like these ivory tower, like pharmaceutical experts who believe you really do need to get the vaccine. You know, they don't listen to the people, like that kind of stuff. It's
Okay.
basically a way of smearing the academic and intellectual elite by pointing out that they're sort of sheltered from the needs of regular people, which is generally not true. Because, like, if you take a look at, like, the academic elite, like, these people sew patches onto their elbows for the most part. Like, not every, like, academic elitist is like a Yale grad law student or like an economist who gets invited to the White House for consults, you know. Most academic elites make less than me and are listened to less than me. So I don't distrust them that much. But ivory tower criticisms, I think, can be selectively worthwhile, because there are definitely some people in society we listen to way the fuck too much, who are like completely sheltered from everyone else, you know.
Okay. God, it's hard to pick the right one. I'm gonna go with. You say I looked it up, but I really want to hear your definition. Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It refers to a psychological tendency for people to overestimate their skill in a given field if they have a little bit of knowledge in it. The colloquial understanding of this term is a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Most people misunderstand that saying. Most people understand that to mean that if you like, knowing stuff can be dangerous, but in reality it's knowing only a little can be dangerous. People tend to be very, very, very confident in their knowledge on a subject if they only know a bit about it, because they read like a summary, like some highlight stuff, and they think like, oh, it's that simple, huh? You know, but of course, obviously it's because all the nuance has been stripped from whatever summary they've read. You see this all the time with conservatives and trans issues when they talk about biology 101, you know, like, you know, trans people aren't real, read a biology textbook. And it's like, well, the biological institutions in the US agree with the existence of trans people, like, overwhelmingly. So unless you think that the biological experts of the Western world haven't read Bio 101 textbooks, you know, like, clearly clearly there's a bit more going on here, but, you know, people get very, very confident. And I think it's important to push back against that.
Okay. Tell me what I only have like a few more, but tell me if you get bored with this.
I'm not.
Okay. Your definition of Marxism.
That encompasses a lot. So, you know, obviously Marxism, Marxism is predominantly a set of economic and philosophical theories which deal with the critiques of capitalism. Marx mostly wrote on critiquing capitalism, not so much on constructing socialism, though obviously his critiques came from an economic and moral foundation that informed socialism. The basic gist of it is to... Okay, there are a bunch of components here. I don't want to do anyone who's listening dirty. I'll summarize it as this. Basically, understand history and human society as an ongoing conflict between people of different economic classes, and the different needs of those different groups of people are what determines not only the allocation of resources in our society, but the people who fight for them and why they fight. That's one. And two, to understand capitalism in a number of ways, largely along the lines through which it entails the exploitation of the working class. Those are, like, I think, the basic elements of Marxism. The former that I referred to being dialectical materialism, and the second that I refer to being sort of a generalization of his critiques of capitalism.
Okay. I'm so happy I'm recording this. I have to listen to it again.
Notes for down the line.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here.
Oh, for what it's worth, by the way, Marx was a modernist philosopher, one of the most prominent ones, actually. So postmodernists, even if they're socialists, tend to disagree strongly with one of the things that he believed, namely his belief that essentially communism was inevitable. It's not quite that simple, but he was of the opinion, damn it, he was of the opinion that all the human social and historical experience could be described as that ongoing conflict between people of different classes. He wanted essentially to frame everything through that lens, and postmodernists really dislike that.
Okay. Cucked.
Ha! Well, historically, being made a cuckold means that somebody, usually a guy, has slept with your wife. Now, contemporarily, being cucked basically just means that you've been bested. So it can mean a couple of things. It can mean that you've been bested, or it can mean that you've been humiliated or usurped. Basically, all of the emotions that you imagine would run through the mind of a person who has actually been cuckolded. Just imagine any scenario which would elicit those emotions in a person under any circumstances, whether it be actually being cuckolded or like losing a video game tournament to like your ex, or just literally like anything like that. You could say,
They're so the same.
cucked. If a person is cucked, like that's an adjective describing their state of being, you would mean that to say that they're compromised. Like basically they're letting other people's ideologies or values run rampant over theirs. They're not standing up for what they actually believe in.
Oh, okay. That's how you use it usually.
Right. Well, far-right people use the term cuckservative to refer to neocons, or more, I guess you'd call them moderate conservatives, because they think that the neocons are cucked in that they are betraying their conservative traditional values in favor of globalist, capitalist, realism. So there's a lot of context there. There's a heavily racialized element. If you go to any porn site and look for cuckold porn, for example, you will find that it is overwhelmingly racialized. Not saying you have to, just saying if you did, you'd find out that's the case. And for that reason, oftentimes when people use the term cucked online, especially in a political context, they're doing it in a way which kind of broadly refers to racial antagonism. Not always. It's a very broad term.
Okay. I'll leave you with this one, and I find this one to be the reason I leave this one to last is because I feel like you use this word probably. I'd like you to guess which word it is. Actually, a word that you use probably more often than, and not like the and a, not an article or anything. You use more than I think just about anything, and I always wonder exactly what you mean when you say it. Do you have any guesses on? Damn it.
Unironically, it has to be
right.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't. It's my SoCal brain rot. It's like me saying like all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what it means. It's a filler word, honestly. Because obviously we're like 3 layers in. Because like unironically before would mean sincerely, but now it's like an emphasis thing, right? Like now would just mean like, well, I really mean this. But now oftentimes when I say unironically, I mean it the opposite way. Like I'm deliberately overplaying the perceived sincerity of a statement in order to indicate that it's not sincere. So I would say it's pretty much just a filler word at this point.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks. I wish I would have made more. I thought you'd get bored with those. That's why I stopped. I was like, I can't do 30 of them. Like,
Not at all.
Go ahead, Rena, if you have something to say.
That was an impressive collection. And some of them I knew from the traditional definitions, but it's interesting to see how things have evolved in the online space,
it moves quickly. Yeah, it all changes pretty often, I'd say. I'm sure that a year from now I'll be using an entirely different set of terminology. So, yeah.
Cool. I have another one, Rena, unless you have a question.
You have more of them?
No, none of those, but I'm sure I'll have some more of those at some point in my life. Well, I have a question about gender pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 17-year-old daughter, and she will have a friend that is transgender, and I've noticed that through conversations with her, sometimes I'll think she's getting a ride from her friend, and then she'll say they them, and then I think for some reason her friend's parents are coming over, because it's confusing at that point. Because she'll say my so and so is bringing me home. They'll probably bring me in a few hours or something, and I'm like, what? Her parents are coming over, or so and so's parents are coming over?
Uh-huh.
Do you think it's too confusing to use they and them, or would do you prefer any of the words that are used, that are kind of more that we've never used before, that are like their own words, or do you think it's fine?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I adapted it into my lexicon pretty easily. It's probably just a familiarity thing. Like, the problem here is that the only, like, person-affiliated, non-gendered pronoun that we had was also the one we used for plurals. So that's just kind of a flaw in the English language, you know? I can understand the ambiguity. There are other languages, of course, that do this as well. Like, they'll have pronouns that can be singular or plural depending on their usage, and you have to infer through context what they are. For the most part, I just use they to refer to people because in the spaces that I'm in, there are just so many trans and non-binary. Well, non-binary people are trans, but there are so many trans people that I just don't want to assume for the most part. And when I say that, I feel like, to use some of my old terminology there, it feels like I should feel cucked, you know? Like, oh God, let me walk on eggshells to avoid offending people with my language. But, like, honestly, it doesn't bother me at all. It's pretty easy. On reflection, I think I kind of always did that because I usually talk ahead of my thoughts anyway. So ever since I was young, I've always kind of just used they in a singular sense anyway, because I often don't know how to structure the sentence right before it actually comes out, if that makes any sense. Basically, the less thought that I have to put in to the semantic construction of a sentence, the easier for me. And they is almost never wrong. So it works for me.
Okay, excellent.
I think it's a familiarity thing, Jayson, because like I've been a health writer and editor for way before a lot of this became mainstream. We switched from using like he, she to just saying they in text, and so you just get used to it, basically. So
yeah, I never got the he, she thing. The people who before, to use plural, they would go like the he, she for ambiguity or for plural or whatever. That always seemed way more awkward to me than just using they. I have no idea how that came to be like standard practice in some publications.
Interesting. Yeah, how I finally came to terms with it was I realized that I have a very small obstacle to get over with my confusion, whereas someone that is transgender has way more to worry about and way more to deal with. So I was like, you know what? I need to chill out, and I figured it out. So
I don't really mind the ambiguity from a political perspective as well, because I feel like it can be kind of... I think it's interesting how people's minds work when they form assumptions based off of the gendered pronouns that you use if you don't use any. Like if you just use they, them. So, for example, if you just use they, them to refer to people who are like, at a sporting match, or like you met X or Y person at the bar, I feel like people have a lot of pre-existing assumptions when it comes to like which genders are doing what. And when you use they, I feel like that arbitrarity is kind of thrown into sharp focus, which I think is a little bit interesting just from an introspective perspective.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm pausing for you, Rena, if you want to say something, because I don't shut up.
So I heard SoCal in there, right? You grew up in SoCal, so what was that like?
In LA. I grew up in Beverly Hills, actually. And that was nice.
So what was that like?
Well, I wasn't in the obscenely rich portion. I was just in the portion where you didn't have to worry about crime, which is still really, really nice. I definitely enjoyed that. No, I enjoyed my time there, at least in the sense that it afforded me a very high-quality education. I'm not going to complain about that at all. I will say that it is an area completely devoid of culture, and that Los Angeles is a uniquely ugly city. I truly despise driving around Los Angeles, not just because of the traffic. The traffic to me is secondary. It's just that the city is incomprehensibly hideous. For the amount of money that's there, and LA has so much money that runs through it. There really are no excuses. They could have built a much prettier city.
And funny enough, that's where I am located now in LA, actually.
In Beverly Hills?
But no, not in Beverly Hills, in West Hollywood.
Oh,
actually.
based. You're next to Hassan. Yeah, I know. I was pretty near West Hollywood. I would go there every Halloween for the big parade that they do with all the gays. They roll out in their outfits, which was nice. West Hollywood is nice. It's just that it's very expensive. You know, I didn't have much disposable income back then. You know, the nightclubs are great and all, but if you can't afford to spend any time there, you know, it's kind of wasted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go to the night. You're right; it is very pricey, but there's a lot of walking around and looking at things, you know. And, yeah, but
Yeah, I'm in the opposite of that. I'm in Vermont.
That is the opposite of Los Angeles in almost every imaginable way.
Yeah, it really is.
It is beautiful up there, though.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
Prettier than
People
LA,
complain
that's for
about
sure.
people complain about the how expensive it is to live here, and I'm just like, well, you know, there's a reason it's expensive. We have to pay more taxes because they stop things like billboards. You can't have billboards. I mean, there's a reason things are so. Our school system's amazing. There's a reason why it's expensive to live here.
I didn't know they didn't allow for billboards.
Yeah, they stop on the border.
That's actually really cool. I like that a
Yeah.
lot. The thing is, like, listen, I think billboards are nice if there's an aesthetic, a consistency to them. So, for example, like Times Square. Is Times Square choked with advertisement? Yes. But, like, you know that if you're going to Times Square, right? Like, that's fine. I think there's a consistency in its appearance that I appreciate.
Yeah, you expect it.
You expect it, and also, like, they lean into it, you know? Likewise, the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. I am totally okay with how many billboards there are there. Again, it feels consistent. It looks fine. I like it. I've been to Tokyo. Tokyo the same. I think that a lot of Japanese cities, well, I don't think they always nail it. I think that some of their boulevards, you know, they lean into advertisements in a way that feels like it contributes aesthetically to the city. But like a lot of advertisement in the United States is just god-awful ugly, just like miserable, wretched, like every Midwestern town, like highway exit overpass, you know, gas stop that turned into a town somehow, just has like this wall of like casino billboards and like anti-advertisement billboards that you have to swim through to even like see the sky. It's disgusting. So, you know, clearly it has to be done well to be worthwhile.
Nice. Rena? I'm terrible at guessing when, like, I'm terrible at volleyball because I think I'm supposed to get the ball, you know, and then somebody else is supposed to. So I get in their way. So
It's a 2v1. You have to dominate me here. You got to be crushing me.
That's right.
we're still working out our flow, but it's going, you know.
Oh, I could just not shut up. I'm just I'm
having
just trying to
fun.
be fair to you.
Sometimes I just let you go because you spend probably more time in the internet spaces than
What are
I
you
do.
saying?
So
Yeah, you're saying he doesn't go outside? How could
I
you?
don't.
he does. Yeah, he does.
I'm
Okay, well,
cursed
me
with an
either, that's
autistic
fine.
child that loves the outside. He's just like, come on. I'm like,
Oh,
all
that,
right.
that has not been my autistic experience. Good to know there's so much diversity in the autist, you know, palette of entertainment.
Oh yeah, he adores outside. Well, I mean, because I have some great questions. I think that will provide you with lots of content because there'll be little snippets for you. But I just really want to know what you think about it.
Hit me.
What is your opinion on ghosts?
As a metaphysical phenomena,
As if they're real or not.
I'm afraid I don't think they're real. I do think I think so. I'm a metaphysical anti-realist in the sense that I don't think it's possible for us to make comments on non-empirical things because all of the means by which we would analyze those things have to be empirical. You know, like I don't think you can disprove the existence of ghosts, for example. Same with God or a bunch of other stuff. It's pretty fun to imagine. In terms of like ghosts as like a component of media, I think that they're done so boring and they could be so much more interesting. Like all ghosts in media, like horror movies or whatever, are the same bullshit over and over and over again. It's like, okay, so like a ghost is mad here because like 5 centuries ago someone did some the bad thing happen. It's like, holy shit, fucking Snoozeville, you know?
Hmm.
Ghosts never have a personality either. They're always just stupid and vengeful. Where
Oh,
are the
God.
horror movies where ghosts have a personality beyond just being like angry and easily lured by like ghost hunting traps, you know? Like why isn't there like a ghost horror movie of like some kind of sadistic like Satan wheeling and dealing ghost where they'll try to like trick you out of things? Like really though. Like imagine a haunting movie where like you know like the stereotypical beginning where they move into a house and like the kid discovers the ghost first, you know? Like the mom will come upstairs and she'll be like, who are you talking to, Timmy? And Timmy will be like, I'm talking to my new friend. And then, you know, she'll be like, and the mom will roll her eyes, be like, oh yeah, who? And then Timmy is like, oh, Mr. Jameson, who died here in 1927. And she'll like frantically look through the newspaper and there was someone who died there in 19 blah 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 blah, right? But like imagine if instead of that bullshit, and then you know how it plays out after that, right? Imagine if the ghost talked to the parents as well, you know? Like, hey, your house is a little run down, I can fix it up for you. Hey, you're having problems with your marriage, I can fix it up for you, you know? It'll cost a bit, just a little, and bit by bit, like you sell little bits of yourself to them until eventually when you're in too deep, you realize the problem and you try to break the deal, you know? And at that point, then you have a goddamn thriller because that ghost owns your ass. I think
It's either a thriller or an Adam Sandler movie.
Well, keep him out of it. Listen, I'm just saying. I think that you could. There's just so. I'm just saying, like, you know, the vast majority of horror movies that involve ghosts are like the same shit. There are people in my chat who are idiots and honestly, frankly, don't even deserve to be in my community, who are pointing out that, if you can believe it, the thing that I'm describing has been done before. Incredibly, they don't seem to understand that, yes, everything has been done before. I'm only pointing out that it's an underrepresented trope that I'd like to see done more. You know, I just, there's so much interesting stuff that you can do, but it's always the same. It's always, you know, when they do possessions, they'll like stand at the end of a hallway going like, you know, and they'll turn around, they'll be spooky. It's the same. It's Snoozeville. I hate horror films. They're so boring. They're so predictable.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I could ramble on that for
for
really
ghosts though.
long time.
What about Sixth Sense? What'd you think of that? I mean, I thought that was a neat take on it.
Yeah, I liked Sixth Sense a lot. Right. I mean, it wasn't really a horror film. It was you know more of a how would you even describe, like, just a drama?
Suspense drama horror.
Yeah, suspense drama. Yeah. I mean, obviously it was a really, really good you know, movie. I just think that as a narrative device, they're underutilized because you can do anything with ghosts. Anything at all. I guess I've noticed this broader pattern where it seems like people like to get a lot of nostalgia kicks out of bringing back horror tropes. So, you know, we have vampires, you know, we had like Amy Rice and Twilight and all that crap, you know, and werewolves kind of parallel to that, you know, and maybe we'll get mummies sometime or another, who knows. But it feels like so rarely are people willing to experiment. Did I say Anne Rice? Is it Amy Rice? Amy Rice, yeah. With the you know, the Vampire Diaries and crap. Whatever.
It was Anne Rice too.
Yeah, I think I'm mixing up a few people, and they fuck, what was I saying? Oh, they need to experiment more, you know? The best piece of vampire media that came out in the past, like, 2 decades, in my opinion, was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which was a video game adaptation of a tabletop game and a broader universe that the tabletop game is set in. And it was pretty subversive, I think, of a lot of vampire tropes. So yeah, I think they just need to experiment more, in my opinion.
So while we're on the topic of Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis, what do you think about that news?
I wasn't surprised. It's funny, I was actually talking with my chat about how I remember the days when he used to know how to act, and then they told me like an hour ago he announced that he had like a debilitating condition and he was retiring from acting. It wasn't timed. Like, they just that just happened to be the same day that I randomly brought him up with stream. Yeah, it's really unfortunate, you know. Honest to God, I kind of wish he'd done it a long time ago, because I feel like he used to be a really talented actor and he's soured his reputation a bit. With a lot of really bad performances. I know he was trying to like get some dosh before quitting. And I understand that. I don't think he did anything like morally wrong or whatever, but it's a little bit frustrating that now it seems like a bunch of people are just going to have a memory of Bruce Willis as just being like the guy who will act in any movie, act in like big finger quotes, you know? And not like all of his amazing work that he did, like, I don't know, 2005 beforehand. Yeah, I don't know.
Some of what I read, it almost made me think that he might have been dealing with dementia for some time.
Maybe. I mean, it hits you, right? You know, it's really unfortunate. You know, all the money in the world can't protect you from stuff like that. You know, at least not perfectly. I mean, he has better health care than you know we would. But yeah, it does suck. I feel bad for him. I know he doesn't want people to feel bad for him, but I do anyway. You know, I really did like Sixth Sense. You know, I really did like Unbreakable. Obviously, those are the movies everyone remembers with him. But you know, it's just hard not to think of that.
Okay, probably similar answer, but maybe not. UFOs and aliens?
I don't think we've ever been visited by aliens. So I don't believe that. Oh jeez. I don't believe that. I mean, I do think there are aliens out there, I guess. It seems pretty statistically likely that there would be. I don't know if we'll ever meet them though. It seems like there are a lot of physical barriers to in the great scope of the universe, you know, to finding other intelligent life. My hope with like aliens or intelligent life is that it's us eventually, you know? Like give it 10,000 years, right? You know, maybe humans colonize the stars a little bit, solar system first and then maybe a little farther out. Maybe not, you know, it's nice to imagine. And if we're able to get that far, you know, we can reflect on that and well, think about how many differences there are between, like, English and French people. Like, they're right next to each other. Think of how many differences there are between Indians and Pakistani people. They're right next to each other. Now imagine, like, parallel human development over centuries on Mars and Earth. As far as I'm concerned, they would be aliens to us. And I think that could be nice to look forward to, because that would lead to a level of cultural diversity that is just unparalleled on Earth.
Okay. Yeah, what do you think the barriers are? Like, do you have a reason why you think aliens would never visit?
I think they would if they could. I don't know about their intentions, but you know, I think they would if they were able to. To me, it's more like I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't want to speak out of my field or whatever. It seems like strong arguments have been made that because there's a temporal problem as well, right? With regards to this, like, you know, life bloomed on our planet so and so long ago, but humans could have arisen 10,000 years in the past, 10,000 years in the future. We were here 10,000 years ago. I just mean like in terms of modern human civilization. We're growing so quickly now, who knows chronologically if we're in line with other civilizations. Maybe there are others in our relative like galactic area, except they rose and fell 1,000,000 years ago or will in 1,000,000 years. Maybe we'll be gone by the time they rise. It's just really hard to say. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
That's what I think too. The universe has been here for so long, and we've only been able to, been where we are now in such a small amount of time. What's the odds that there's anything out there that's lined up with us? So somebody could have been able to visit us a couple million years ago or 1,000,000,000 years ago.
Could be wrong, of course. These are all predictions, right? They're not even models. Really, because a model needs pre-existing data to form a pattern. We basically just have like theories that we're plugging in to see like which makes the most sense, which describes what we've already seen. It could be that one day we get visited by like a full-on Galactic Federation type deal, and we're like, oh, okay, I guess we were totally fucking wrong. New model, you know, like it could happen. That's happened to humans before, so not that exact thing, but that general thing.
The exact thing. Go ahead, Rena.
I was just laughing.
All right. Are we in a simulation?
Metaphysical anti-realism. I don't think there's any point in talking about it. I think we should live as though we're not. I will say, however, that I find the arguments that we are to be incredibly unconvincing. because the arguments that it is more likely we are in a simulation than not presuppose the idea that it's possible for a computer to simulate everything, and it presupposes the idea that a computer, which up to this point we only know of computers that can process empirical things, could process a metaphysical thing, like our consciousness. I feel like some people have a very, very, very high opinion of what computers are capable of doing, when at the moment we know that they can't even do a fraction of what we're capable of with our meaty flesh brains. And even we can't like create consciousnesses in our imagination, right? Like when we think of a person and imagine them, it's not like that person exists just in a limited capacity. They only exist in our thoughts. You can get philosophical about it, but no, I don't really think so. I think a lot of people, I think to a lot of people, and this may come off as like really cynical, but I think to a lot of people, the pontification here, you know, like, are we in a simulation, are we not, serves a similar social function that religion used to. And kind of still does, you know. Historically, religion has often been used as a way of delaying one's rewards for good behavior in life, where, you know, you work your entire life for your Lord, and it's like, okay, well, don't have a revolution or whatever, because if you die and you were good and pious in life, then you'll get your eternal reward in heaven, which is worth way more than decent pay in, like, the mortal life. And with the simulation stuff, I feel like we're training people for a kind of Rick and Morty tier political apathy, where there are people out there who get disconnected from real world politics and social engagement because they're just so obsessed with the idea that there's some scientific truth that invalidates all of this political or social work. I've talked to people like that before. It always really frustrated me. That's not the case for everyone. It's just something I've noticed.
Okay. It's funny when you said that, because I up until the point where you said that it's, you know, predisposed about being in a simulation, is that you have to believe that a computers will eventually be able to make Sims 100 million, and that will be the perfect society, so that everybody in the Sims, all the characters in the Sims now are in a simulation, but they're all sentient. And I thought to myself, yeah, computers will eventually do that, but that also assumes that we would exist long enough for computers to be able to be built that well, and it's too much assuming. And I guess
we don't even know what a consciousness is yet. Like, we don't even we have no idea what it actually is. There's no answer to that. No matter how many times people have tried, we don't have any explanation for what consciousnesses are. So to that end, I mean, if we can't answer that, I don't know how we could even begin to answer other questions.
Well, you kind of touched on it a little. What about what are your feelings on religion, and specifically good or bad for society nowadays?
I'm not a big fan. I'm a fan of religion in the Durkheimian sense, where you have social rituals that reinforce the distinction between the sacred and the profane. The idea,
a new word for my list now. What Whatian?
Durkheim, Emil Durkheim. He was a sociologist in the 19th century who wrote on, amid other things, religion.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm very fond of his definition of religion because it doesn't involve anything supernatural. It's just rituals that people engage in to distinguish between the sacred and the profane. To that effect, a football game is a kind of religion, or football broadly, because, you know, people engage in ritualistic behavior with it, and they certainly distinguish between the sacred and the profane. You would call it, I suppose, acceptable or unacceptable sportsmanship, following the rules of the game, you know. We do this for lots of stuff. I think those things are great. I think people need that rallying cry. I think people need that that symbol to work around. What I don't like is superstition, which unfortunately is just an inseparable part of most religion. I'm very much not a fan of that. I think it disrupts people's ability to think critically.
Yeah, I would agree with that point. There is something even to, like, when people are praying, like that act of chanting together, you know, and so some of those acts, there's a lot to that can be good, but I agree with the superstition.
Yeah, because
being
going to a political protest is a ritual that you use to reinforce the distinctions between the sacred and the profane, you know, and I've done that. That's fine. Going to a concert, a festival, like, these things can be fun. And I think they elicit sometimes really positive emotions in people. It seems to be something we need, or at least something we want a lot, because we keep building these structures over and over between civilizations and time periods. We keep doing this over and over. We find excuses to get people together into stadiums and to collectively engage in behavior to distinguish between things we do and don't like. Obviously, we like doing this, whatever. But yeah, superstition.
I noticed the other day you couldn't think of Lando Calrissian's name in Star Wars.
That's it.
And also, not long ago, you didn't quite understand something about the holodeck on Star Trek. And I had a question because I think I prejudged you and assumed you were a huge sci-fi fan, and particularly Star Trek and Star Wars. I was going to ask you, Star Trek versus Star Wars, what are your opinions? But how much are you into them, actually?
I don't care about Star Wars. I mean, I've watched, I think, all of the movies except for Rise of Skywalker because I heard that it was a trash fire, and I don't care. I'm not giving them my money. They would have to pay me to see that one, judging from what I've heard. So that's one. In terms of Star Trek, the only Star Trek media that I've really consumed has been The Next Generation, which I watched a lot back in high school, like the whole show, some episodes multiple times. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I was very, very fond of that show, so I would definitely prefer Star Trek.
I actually do too, and it switched for me. I used to love Star Wars more, and just as I got older and smarter, Star Trek just totally took over.
It's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's amazing. I personally am not a fan of anime. I can't get into it, and I'm dying for someone that maybe can explain to me why I might be able to get into it. So what do you like about anime?
First of all, I like animation broadly. Whether it be anime or like Western animation, just drawing cool things happening. It's just, because for the longest time, animation was pretty much exclusively considered like a kid's game, basically. And to an extent, it still is, but there's a lot of potential there. I think that anime jumped on that market earlier, the idea of taking animation seriously. And for that reason, there are more anime studios and anime directors and, well, animators in Japan, or at least that work with Japanese studios, willing to engage in that kind of stuff than there are over here in the West. But I think the gap is closing.
Interesting. And you talk about anime a lot, though. Is there any reason... So what's something that is not anime that you like?
Like Western animation?
Okay. Like
do you mean like a specific property within that field, or
like Looney Tunes, or like a actual what kind of, like, what cartoon? Or I'll use that word.
Oh, Looney Tunes is good.
Yeah, it is.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is a really good anime inspired. I would consider it anime. That was made by a Western studio that was put out by Nickelodeon. There are plenty of, I think, really, really good Western animations that are coming out these days. The two big fields that they're in are like all ages but young accessible shows like Adventure Time or Gravity Falls or Star vs. the Forces of Evil or Aquaria or oh god, that's the one with Loop? The Owl House. You have that stuff, and then you have like adult comedy. The best of which in like recent past, I think, has been Smiling Friends. Where animation is used to sell like kind of edgy adult comedic beats. And I think there are like standout hits in both of those fields that I really, really enjoy. I just like what animation can do. There's just stuff you can do with animation that you absolutely cannot do with other types of mediums. And I just wish that we invested more time into it. Japan just puts more of it out. There are significant problems with anime, though. So it's by no means do I have like an undying and essential need for Japan to be the producer of this particular medium.
It won't be very long until we can all just make any animation on our phone, like perfectly, and make our own shows like we all do on YouTube for other stuff. Good. I think, anyway.
The more accessible the medium gets, the better for everyone. Well, not for big studios, but fuck them.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, they're not doing a good job with movies anyway, so they need to... Yeah, like, what's your opinion between film and shows?
I feel like shows have been rising lately. In terms of their relative prominence, like prestige television and stuff. I don't watch movies that much. Honest, I don't watch like shows that much either. I probably shouldn't front, though I do. It's I don't know. Maybe I feel like people are getting more mature. No, that's the wrong take. Let me think here. Okay, I will say this. I feel like movies have been affected negatively by prestige television. Because television shows will give you more time to explore a character than you'll ever be able to get with a movie. Like, my favorite character exploration is Walter White in Breaking Bad, of course. That's over the course of, like, what, 35, 50-minute long episodes? I mean, you're never, ever going to get that with a movie. And I think a lot of people who make movies look at that, and they have their movie-making tendencies negatively affected by the depth of some of this prestige television. I think, if anything, what movie makers need to learn from right now is Broadway. Because for the longest time, Broadway, I think, has been one of the premier fields for abstracting large events or like a broad range of things into a short frame of time. Like, you can get, like, here's your character development, like it's a song. You know what I mean? I feel like movies need to learn more from that. Like, don't try to give me like this 2-hour arc on a character, because you're never going to be able to outdo prestige television. Like, learn how to concisely engage with all these elements and all these mediums, and sell me on that, and work within the limitations of a 2-hour runtime. Don't like run up against them. Don't make me feel like you wish your movie could be 5 hours, because that's how it always is these days. All these movies, the directors are like, well, the actual like tape on the cutting room floor was 7 hours long, but the studio told us to cut it down to only 3.5 hours. Release the Snyder cuts. Like, no, fuck you. Make a real movie. Do it within the acceptable length of time, asshole. You know?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
now they can too.
Yeah, and you're left, and then when they have that long version, they cut it, and then you're left feeling shortchanged as a viewer because they didn't, do it in that appropriate time.
Yeah, they didn't
So
structure it right for the actual. I felt this while watching The Batman, a movie that I liked, by the way. But like, they absolutely could have made that 30 minutes shorter without making the movie any worse. And I don't know. Like, I don't know if the editors are rebelling. I just don't know why it's going this way. Like, it's not TV. Like, treat it like a movie.
Interesting. Kind of a non-segue at all. But what do you think makes a person conservative as opposed to liberal? Like, what factors go into that to make that happen?
Fear, mostly. This has been shown in studies too. It's not just me being essentializing it, but conservatives have a naturally higher fear response. By naturally, I don't mean like inherently. Obviously socialization plays a role in this. But yeah, they have a higher fear response. Like immigration, for example, like it just sets off fear and disgust. Those are the big ones.
So are you talking about the amygdala study?
Possibly. I'd have to go back and look at it. I don't remember its name. It's been a while. But it was like a very strong correlation.
Yeah, there was a correlation between the larger amygdalas generally were conservative because of disgust and fear. Exactly.
I don't know how much of it.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it is like an inherent biological thing that can't be changed, or how much of it is just is like a product of socialization that amplifies pre-existing differences in people's biology. But yeah, unfortunately, it does seem to be a pretty significant, like, yeah, it seems to be a pretty significant difference, unfortunately. I don't like to think that about people. I always like to think people's minds can be changed with a good argument, but yeah.
Well, it actually helped me because I used to get really upset at people. I couldn't understand why they were thinking what they were thinking. And I'm not saying that I think they're like mentally ill or something. I just think I can now understand why, possibly, if it's real, if it's true, why they feel the way they do, and it helped me get more tolerance towards people that think completely differently than me by knowing, oh, might have a large amygdala. I don't know. It's just for some reason it helped me.
Oh no, I get you. It's definitely difficult to reconcile with no matter what, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you say you feel like people's minds can be changed, right? Because I've talked to a lot that don't feel like that, you know, you can have all the facts, you can go back and forth, and you're just, if you go into a conversation, you're unlikely to change somebody's mind. So what makes you feel like you're able to move somebody, and are, you know, can you point that out?
Well, it's kind of the point of what I do, so I feel like I'd have to be exceptionally cynical to not feel that way. I have to hope, right? You know, when I argue with conservatives and their audiences see it, you know, I always hope that leads to a positive outcome at the end of the day.
I can help you answer this question. Rena, well, how do you feel about guns?
Uh-oh.
Oh, you mean this story that I told you from?
No. I sent you a video of Vaush about, and I said I was really opposed to guns and I wanted a lot of gun laws, and he had a really good argument, I thought, on why that wouldn't work. And I assume, since you may not have watched it, you still believe there should be gun laws. I could be wrong.
I mean, I think I've gone back and forth on that one, but I think like right now where I am is I feel like you drive a car, you should have a license, and there should be some kind of accountability, you know, and responsibility around it. But I don't think everything should be banned. I think like you have things for, like I said, operating a vehicle and everything, but you don't have all that in place.
Well, that's an example where he changed my mind. So.
For me, it's mostly a matter of political capital. There are so many guns already in this country, and people feel so strongly about them, and there are so many other ways to address the negative externality of guns that the idea of, like, I feel like we could place a really strong wedge to pull conservatives and libertarians over by not being, like, super anti-gun or whatever. It just seems, like, politically inefficacious, you know? It would be like, I don't know, in a policy perspective, I feel like banning, like, high fructose corn syrup would also be really good, but in terms of political expediency, like it would be led by like the most American opposition movement in all of history. You know, like of all the you know, food companies linked arm in arm with everyone who's ever enjoyed any food sold in this fucking country, because they would, you know, they'd get all the TV ads about how liberals are taking away their tasty syrup. And, yeah, it's you know, it's just a matter of what you can actually get done. To finish your point. With changing people's minds, you know, you don't change people's minds with a better argument for the most part. Sometimes, but not always. Most of the time, in my experience, the best way to change a person's mind is to establish yourself as a reputable source of information, as somebody worth listening to, and then, you know, plant the seeds of a different perspective in their head and wait for them to bloom. You know, people are very defensive. You know, the idea of just like listening to a guy shouting online, you're going to change your mind on something you care about. Very unlikely. Very, very unlikely. But if you make yourself come off like this cool person, you know, like you're cool, you're trustworthy, you're reputable, you're funny, you know, people are more likely to open up and think like, you know, okay, maybe I disagree with him on this point, but I'll hear him out. They hear you out, and after that, you've got a way better shot at changing their mind than you ever would if you were some antagonist trying to force a new perspective down their throat.
So it does sound like you use, you know, some of the things that I've discussed with people, because you're building a trust and rapport then, right? And then kind of easing your way in, rather than like, you're not hoping that in one moment, one interaction, you're going to change somebody's mind.
Yeah, that will very, very rarely happen unless both people are coming at something from a strictly empirical perspective, which is almost never the case. Maybe sometimes in academia this could be the case. Even if you look in academia, people like will die on a hill and burn their careers to the ground because they can't accept that their data was wrong. Like even people dealing with empirical information in an empirical field when proven empirically wrong, they still won't accept when they're wrong sometimes. It's just humans are just really bad at readjusting their perspective in line with new information. We're just like really bad at it, like borderline inherently, so.
When you're talking with somebody that is very far to the you know, polar opposite of you, like say you're talking to somebody that is a white supremacist, and you're being very, I would say, borderline hostile at some point once they've provoked you. Like, I would say, yeah. I mean, you usually start out pretty cool, and then they say some stuff that's just, all right, that's it. And then it's kind of like there's a switch that goes off. Are you not hoping to change their mind? Or are you doing it for the audience?
Well, sometimes, most of the time, really, it's for the audience. I mean, one person I'm talking to versus thousands that are listening. Usually, it's to my betterment to focus on the larger crowd. But in terms of changing a person's mind directly, you know, in a way, if they disagree with me, they're kind of like a proxy for people listening who might disagree with me, you know? And I've noticed, especially for far-right people, that I said you have to establish yourself as a trustworthy figure. Well, one thing conservatives really, really like is strength. Posing strength is really important for them. And a lot of them, and you see this in far-right circles especially, they really get off on the idea that they're like these like aggressive uber warriors who are different than those cucked liberals and conservatives, you know, that they're strong and uncucked and they're always right and blah blah blah. They don't value introspection or like growing or learning that much. So I find it's often really effective to tear them down by being meaner than they can be, funnier than they can be, you know, unflappable. Because a lot of these people have emotional issues, right? Like, it's not as though like Klan rallies and neo-Nazi groups are full of the most emotionally upstanding people. Like, a lot of these people are desperate for some kind of role in life. Like, they're looking for validation from people, anybody, no matter how they can get it. So it's not like they're like the toughest, you know, group to crack or whatever. So anyway, you know, you posture, you know, you show you're stronger, you're funnier, you're not bothered by them, they're bothered by you, blah, blah, blah. And when you do that, you know, maybe the person you're talking to won't change their mind. That's pretty tough to guarantee. But maybe other people who are listening, they'll hear all that and they'll think like, oh, well, maybe that guy was a cucked loser, you know? Maybe I would have done better in their position. But when they grow critical of that person who represents them, they grow more critical of themselves. That's the point, you know. Everyone is an XP for everyone else, just to varying degrees. And if you can make them distrustful of people on their side, you can make them distrustful of their own positions. And that, I hope, would lead to introspection.
Do you feel like you have some people in your community now that have like come over from other spaces or from some of these conversations?
A lot of people in my community are former like alt-righters or conservatives or skeptics or libertarians. Yeah, like a lot. Usually when we poll in my chat, the answer is like around a third of them, which I think is a pretty remarkable number for like a left-leaning content creator. I don't think there are many current conservatives who watch me at the moment. Usually I think that's a pretty marginal portion of my audience because it's been a while since I've broken off and fractured another person's community like Sargon's or whatever, but it'll happen again.
So how far, like when they switch over, how dramatically do their views change? That's interesting coming from far right. And then now do they actually consider themselves on the left?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with why they were far right. Because I've had convos with like former alt-righters in my community. And the common narrative that I see basically is that they were feeling frustrated by problems in the world and they misattributed it to issues that the far right would get them to see. And I helped them see that those issues were caused by other things and that their lives were being made worse by the far right. So, like, this is one of the reasons why there's, like, almost a stereotype of people who used to be far right who are now, like, trans girls, you know? Because a lot of people often who feel frustrated with their, masculinity, like their masculinity is challenged or they don't feel secure or comfortable in it, will overcompensate by participating in the politics of ultra-masculinity, of the far right, you know? But if you break that down and it's like, okay, well, are you this? Are you happy? You know, this, that, the other. Well, then it's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill. I really do feel like a lot of far-right people at their, like, heart are good people who are just... They've just been given the wrong information on the world, given the wrong problems, and they're responding to it, of course, in the way you would expect somebody to when given all the wrong info by the wrong people. I think they can be moved over. There are people whose politics are, like, pretty much entirely based on disgust and hatred, like explicit, fervent hatred, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a mental illness. I think those people should be in fucking loony bins. You know, I don't know if those people can be moved over quite as much. Sometimes maybe, but for the most part, those people seem like lost causes. I think they're minorities, though, in the far right.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. That if there isn't like militia behind it, people just have the wrong information, you can move them. But if it's solely based on hate, then that seems highly unlikely that you're going to move those folks.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's possible. I mean, oftentimes I've noticed the biggest pattern for people who are super ultra hateful, at least in the modern world today, like with the alt-right or whatever, it seems to be like, basically they feel like their society is being torn apart by X minority group, whether it be gays or trans people or like the Jews or whatever. They feel like everything is being ruined by them. And they feel contemptuous because not only is everything being torn apart, but the like mainstream media won't like let them talk about it or whatever. And that contempt broils over into hatred, and as a product of that, they become very performatively cruel. And that's really tough to break into, I think, because I think the emotional impulses that lead to that are very ugly, but it is possible. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Some people are, everything's a spectrum to me, and there are people that on the far end of a spectrum of being able to be talked into stuff, and they're just so far over there, there's nothing you can do. But I think what you're saying, when you're talking to someone that's like that, you might be helping people that are closer to the middle, seeing the 2 points and hearing your points are more logical.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always that middle, right? A lot of people who are part of far-right communities are not themselves what we would consider far-right. They're more like sympathetic to the far-right. It's the same with the far-left, right? Like, I would consider myself far-left. Not every person in my community is a communist. Not even close. Probably less than half, honestly. A lot of them are like, reformist socialists who are sympathetic to my ideology, or liberals who think that a lot of my arguments are on board, even if they don't agree with all of my end state prescriptions. So there's always there's always so much room to work with.
Why do you think so many people on the left and influencers have such an issue with you?
There are two parts to it. One is that I don't give ground. I'm a very headstrong person, I talk about the left, being super argumentative or hateful towards me, but like, let's be real. If I was a far right creator, I would have already burned all those bridges too. Like if I believed politically like far right stuff, I don't think that I'd be getting along with everything in that space either. I'm pretty sure that a lot of this has to do with me being like a very like contentious person and headstrong. But I do think there is something particular about the left, and unfortunately, and this sounds really dumb, but I do think it's true, I think a lot of it is on the left, people are used to people like me being quiet. There's kind of an expectation that people who are cis or white or men should kind of like be deferential to the voices of marginalized groups. And there is a truth behind that. I think it's valid to say that, you should listen, you should be considerate, you should inform your perspective, but sometimes that sentiment is misused when the real message is something like don't speak up at all. When there are disagreements, like on the online left, if you disagree with like a black queer woman, you got to give a good goddamn argument for why. If you disagree with a white boy like me, all you have to do is say, like, you're speaking too loud, like, you need to listen to marginalized voices when they disagree with you, and that's it, You can pretty much leave it at that, and that, like, overwhelmingly, people are going to agree with that perspective, they're going to side with you saying that. So I think that's a little bit frustrating. I think people with privilege should use their privilege, weaponize it, to support marginalized groups, and I do my best to do that.
Couple things in the chat. Some of them are a little bit old. Alex asked about if you could go into worker cooperatives a little bit more. He was hoping you'd go on a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd be delighted. Yeah, a worker cooperative is, well, it's what it sounds like. A business which is run at least to some degree, democratically by the workers who work there. There are many forms of a worker cooperative. There's not just one way of doing it. But it's something I'm very in favor of politically because, economically, our institutions are autocratic. We don't have any way of checking the behavior of our managers. I think that collectively this leads to a lot of misery because workplaces are inhospitable to their workers. Workers have very little say and very little ability to affect their environment. It makes people unhappy. It leads to poor representation of their interests in broader business. And it means that the economy as a whole is run for the interests of a very small group of, oligarchs, as opposed to, through democratic processes, the entire working class. And I think that should change. I think it would be good if we fix that.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, we covered a couple of other things, so
I love
never mind
covering
about
things.
those. Yeah, me too. Yeah, you it's like you looked into. Somebody wants you to know that Vermont is the only state in the country that the capital does not have a McDonald's.
Really? That's quite a claim to fame.
We've actually had 3 McDonald's close because no one was going to them in this state. It's pretty insane.
That's brilliant.
Is impressive.
That's
Yeah.
a state worthy of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I love my state. So I have a question that is a little weird, and I always have to ask it. But I want to make sure Rena doesn't have anything first.
Well, I think I'm kind of curious. So you said that you don't mind burning bridges, and I'm noticing as the left online space is like fractured and fractured again. And where do you kind of see yourself fitting into that, or do you? Even?
I probably don't. Look, I would like to think that I'm pretty principled about this stuff. When I dislike a person, I mean really dislike them, I will still recommend their content if I think their content is politically beneficial. There's a person in LeftTube who I really don't like called Sean. I will still relentlessly advocate for his videos. They are really, really good because they're video essays, edited, scripted, they're a better summary of the content included than anything I could provide in a live stream. I really value stuff like that, and I learned from his videos to get better at my own arguments. And I really hate the guy. That's something I can do, and I think I'm basically the only person who can, because it seems like as soon as a person on the left dislikes me, their ability to recognize the validity of what I do just instantly goes out the window for the majority of them, which is frustrating. So my position is this: I don't want my disruptiveness as a figure to deter people in my community from seeking out the best voices and the best arguments, I think other people on the left are doing that because they're discounting the value that I bring. Dog?
Oh, you can hear Charlie. Yeah,
Tell them I love them.
Charlie, I'm in a meeting.
I feel like the issue isn't getting along. It's, does the fact that you're not getting along meaningfully impede your ability to engage in good advocacy? And for me, the answer to that, I think it's no. And for other people on the left, I think the answer to that is yes. If they could dislike me but still understand or recognize the value of what I do, that would be fine for me. And I guess that's what I'm going to try to push for.
Yeah.
That is where I feel like Jayson and I were very simpatico on that point. And I even find there are people that both of us will watch a variety of people, and I might agree with some takes, but not others, but I'll still consume, a lot of different content and hear, what people have to say about things rather than oh, I really hated this take. Now I'm totally turned off by this one person, So I like that you are still, even if you might not like somebody from a personal standpoint, you're still recognizing that they've got solid content and you're wanting your community to be open to that. I do think we need more of that across the board.
Don't get me wrong. I will recommend against certain people's content if I feel like they're harmful, or wrong or stupid or whatever. But I try to make those arguments separately from how I feel about them as a person. I'm not perfect, of course, but it's something that I make an effort to do. And Yeah, I don't know. It just seems really difficult for a lot of people to manage, especially since my prominence in the online left has led so many people to engage in this really weird broad attack against like debate bros or live streamers, but they always walk all those arguments back the moment they have a proper conversation about that. Like I remember JD Signifier doing this video on this, but then he walked it all back with Shark 300 like pretty much immediately, and it's like, well, he didn't walk it all back. I shouldn't say that. Just like a lot of his criticisms of Debate Bros or of like live stream content instantly smoothed out the moment anyone challenged him. I did the same with Noah Samson. It's like, why make these arguments if you don't really believe it? Like if you personally dislike me, make a video calling me an asshole. Like that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's your right. Godspeed. Just, I just leave the phony politics out of it. Yeah.
You're familiar with Jimmy Dore.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as though he switched on purpose to gain audience, or do you think that he's being genuine, or do you think that he's a person that's like just making up stuff to
I
get
don't
an
think he
audience?
believes a single fucking thing. I don't
Really?
think, and yeah,
Wow.
no, I don't believe Jimmy Dore has a real belief at all. I think he is 100% like completely like he'll just say what gets him the audience. I don't feel that way about a lot of people I disagree with, but that man switches talking points on a dime effortlessly, and it's always whatever gets him like the best YouTube like monetization at the time. Like he never ever dies on a hill to defend a point against the wishes of his audience. It's always just constantly shifting between right and left talking points, whatever his audience wants to hear. Always.
Interesting. Yeah, I was kind of a fan of him when he was on TYT, and then when he moved away, I was sort of like, okay, I guess I'll deal with this. And then he just stopped criticizing the right. Like just stopped.
Yeah.
It was so weird. I just didn't understand what was going on.
Well, there's a big market for that right now. I think a lot of people on the left really hate the idea of being roped in with liberals. Like they really hate that, like the being grouped in with them. So they'll basically like anything they can do or say that makes them distinct, even if it's like really stupid attacks against the Democrats or just meaningless virtue signaling, like I think they'll go for it. It's really dumb, but whatever. It's just seems to be a disposition of the political climate.
People want to see Charlie, just so you know, Rena. That's her dog's name.
I don't know if you can.
He's right over there in the corner.
He's in the corner.
I don't think we can see him, but he's here with us in spirit at least.
Here, I'll get him.
Oh yes.
Let me see here. I'm terrible at reading, but this is a long one. So how can left-leaning politicians learn from your strategy and engage it to get some of that sway? What did you write? Oh, it's supposed to be an A. Away able right folks on board. Sway. Oh, sorry. No, it is. It's sway able right folks. How can your strategy be used?
I don't think that I'm unique in this respect. Like I think I'm in line with Bernie Sanders here, I feel like if you want to pull people over, lots of people, focus on real issues that people have had actual negative experiences with and harp on them over and over and over again and learn how to prioritize your talking points, I feel like Bernie Sanders did a remarkable job. Not necessarily like swaying conservatives, but at the very least being treated in better faith by them than like Biden or a lot of other left liberals or whatever get. In large part because Bernie Sanders really does seem to believe this like unite around the common issues talking point, and it doesn't come across as like phony bipartisanship, which is the vibe I always get from like Biden, for example. Oh geez, I'm just realizing. I had a debate scheduled at 8. In 37 minutes. Because I didn't realize this would go for so long. Not that I had any apprehension against it. Only saying that I'll have to wrap up relatively soon.
Okay, if Rena, if you have anything else, go ahead. I have my last question.
Yeah, I think this has been really great, by the way. Thank you so much for joining us and taking a chance on our very first stream here.
No, it's been delightful. I really enjoy these questions. Also, I'm sorry that 30 minutes of it got bogged down with tech issues that actually ended up being my fault.
It'll be the most successful videos we make.
Seriously, thank you very much.
Yeah, I have one final question.
Hit me up.
So you're sitting where you are right now, and all of a sudden through the door, someone that looks exactly like you comes over to you and says, I'm from the future. Oh, and they have ripped shirt and they're dirty. You have to come with me right now. What do you do?
Jesus. They're ripped shirt and they're fuck, I think I'd shoot them. With the many guns that I own.
They look just like you.
They look just like me, right.
Yeah.
Fuck, I couldn't shoot them then.
Well, they couldn't shoot you because they're from the future.
Right, well, they couldn't shoot me, but I couldn't shoot them, you know? Shit. Fuck, I don't know. I feel like at this point, my community has trained me to see any white guy with a beard as, like, looking like me anyway, so I feel like if just any white guy with a beard in his 50s with a tattered shirt burst in, I'd think, like, oh, Vaush? Yeah, like, my mind has been completely poisoned by that. Fuck. I guess I have to go with him, you know? If it's a bit to, like, kill me, it seems like a lot of effort. So, yeah, I guess I'd have to trust them.
All right. That's pretty much, I mean, you kind of have to.
Yeah, also...
Some people say no.
Well, yeah, also, you know, like, at that point, like, live a little, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And we would understand if, like, that happened during the stream and you were like, I gotta go. I'd be like, oh, well, duh. Yeah, of course you have to go. One of my best friends came up with an answer, and it was instantaneous, and I suggest we all decide to incorporate this into our lives. I asked that same question to him, and he immediately, without missing a beat, said I would ask him for the password.
The password?
And I said, yeah, and I said, wait, you have a password already? He was like, of course I do. I just was amazed at the timing. Like, he was just like, I would ask him for the password. So we should all make a password for ourselves so that if we ever do come from the future, we can ask for the password.
Oh, right. Yeah, probably. Shit. You have to just keep it in your head. Or you could ask, like, what am I thinking about right now? And my future self, you know, knowing sort of probabilistically what's going on in my head could answer effortlessly. Like, oh, you're thinking about Elden Ring. Like, oh, it's the 2nd of April, 2022.
Well, I would guess that.
And this is why I'd be very hesitant, you see. I wear it on my sleeve. I'm a very simple man, okay? You know, it's be very, very easy to establish, you know, like, an assassination attempt on me with this method.
Well, I tried Elden Ring. I played it for an hour and 50 minutes so I could get my money back in case I didn't like it. And I couldn't get into it because it's not my style of game. Mm-hmm. I'm not good with games that have repetition and I have to make, you know, recognize patterns. I play games like DayZ and Rust and Ark, you know, survival games. Mm-hmm. But watching you play it, I'm just like, man, I should rebuy the game because you've gotten much farther than I did. So,
it's like, one of the things that I think, one of the reasons why I think these games are so popular is because they're so incredibly different to, like, traditional gaming conventions that have been established pretty much everywhere else. And for that reason, I think the games feel very different, and their pace and their learning curve are very, 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 very different. And I think that can be off-putting at first, but I do think sticking with it is really rewarding. If it's just not your thing, of course, that's also perfectly valid.
All right, well, excellent. Who are you debating?
A person wants to debate with me on the validity of NATO as an organization. So we'll see how that goes. I actually forget if they're more pro or against it than me. I actually forget. So I'll find out as soon as I call them. I'll judge from their language to try to determine the actual the talking points that I have to bust out, you know.
Well, I want to also say thank you very much. in the beginning, I didn't think this was going to happen, and then you were just so nice on emails. I was like, I think it's going to happen. He's being super, super cool. So anyone that says you're not super cool, they're wrong.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, it has genuinely been a delight. Thank you for sitting through the technical issues, and I'm happy we were able to get them resolved.
Excellent. And just so everyone knows, if you go to humanhappyhourpodcast.com, you can learn about all the different places you can find us. Please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. That would be fantastic. I'm sorry I didn't ask first, but I don't really have much of a chance of getting that many people to hear me than I just did.
You never need to apologize for shouting yourself out. We'll link it in the description. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
All right,
Thank
you too.
you.